I'm currently a behavioral health consultant at North Bend Medical Center. And so I specialize in integrated behavioral health, which is really rooted in primary care. And so that's where I spend most of my time. I'm the co-director of the program. So we have a team that works with all of the internal family medicine, women's health, and pediatric providers.
I'm Bianca Williams. I work for Bob Baloney Ranch here in East Bay. I work in our BDR counseling services program, and I'm our director of development. From a clinical standpoint, I'm a QMHA, and I do peer delivered services and family support specialist out of our clinic.
Hi, I'm Mary Small. I'm the co-owner of Outgoing Counseling Solutions. The co-owner is there, that's Kylie. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm the therapist for Outgoing. I specialize in LGBTQ issues, including like gender affirmation care and trans health. I'm also a certified consultant in training for EMDR, which is a specialized kind of therapy for like PTSD and other trauma-related symptoms.
My name is Lance Nelson. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Waterfall Clinic. I oversee the mental health, behavioral health, and the autism program at Waterfall Clinic. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and my specialties are at-risk youth and crisis counseling with background in inpatient acute care.
Nice. So I think our first question we're going to start with is, what is mental health? Like, I think we hear that a lot, but like, what is it to you guys?
Popcorn it?
Sure.
Mental health, to me personally, is a journey that's individual for everyone, I think. I believe it's one of the most critical aspects to our existence is our joy, our wellness, and how we feel, how we survive, how we thrive in our environment. So to me, mental health is very much a huge part of our existence.
I'm sure there's many different ways you can talk about it. What comes to mind for me is like the mind-body connection, so the connection between your brain and how it functions and the chemicals it produces and how you experience right now and how that connects with your body, and that all feeling okay and functioning okay or not.
Nice. Okay.
I think I honestly agree with everything everyone said. I think mental health is health. I am reluctant always to separate mental health and physical health out because, like Marie was saying, there is that connection that's so vital to who we are, and everything crosses over into different lines. So our mental health affects our physical health, and vice versa. Our physical health affects our mental health. We see things like Kelly's doing with integrated health, behavioral health care, and things like that, where we're trying to eliminate the little island that mental health sometimes has found itself on, and bring that back into the conversation about health in general. So it doesn't really answer the question on what mental health is, except that I believe that it's a key component to what makes us healthy overall.
Nice.
Yeah, I absolutely agree too. I think adding in there is thinking about our overall well-being and how psychology, our thoughts, our emotions play a part of that, and then on a spectrum that mental health and wellness is one certain thing. It's different for each individual and each community how they define their mental health and well-being, and it changes over time. It's something we experience throughout our whole life, and so we could really not pay much attention to our mental health for a while because it feels really stable and it sustains the things that we value and we can really live a quality of life that's important to us. And then other times it might be more concerning to us and then start to become a problem in our life. And that's when we pay a little bit more attention to it. Kind of like other concerns that might come up physically or spiritually or with family stress. And so kind of one of the dimensions of our overall being.
I know I personally grew up with, put your nose to the grind, fake it till you make it. Are there signs that people should actually start looking for mental health instead of just, I hate to say it, but struggling along? Like what's normal and what's, okay, it's time for like some mental health support.
It's such a cliche thing, but normal is a setting on a washing machine. Mental health support isn't just for people that are like sick. Mental health support is for anybody who is finding that they would like a little bit of extra ease in like how they're experiencing the world today. Like in the middle of COVID, it applies to like literally anyone, everyone, whether that's I'm having some stressors at work or I keep procrastinating something that like I don't want to do. Why do I keep doing that? Really big things or traumatic things that have happened that we keep thinking about. Like there's big stuff, but if there's something that's happening in your life, how you feel, how you're reacting, how you're thinking, how like body symptoms are coming up that seem connected with like what's happening in your head instead of like being sick, you need to go talk to somebody.
Too, it's situational and different in every circumstance because as humans we are such individuals with different needs. And it can be helpful to have trusted friends or someone that you trust who you can go to ask questions. It's good to have curiosity and do research and not be afraid to ask your doctor or to ask the clinic what they think or talk to somebody that doesn't know the situation you're in that can give you an unbiased idea and some options so that you don't feel like you're going to be stuck in the mud forever. And I think all of us experience that feeling at some time, but when it starts to affect your ability to go to work, when it affects whether or not you can get out of bed or shower, when that becomes difficult, those are the times where it can be very helpful to reach out and just ask someone what they think, or reach out to a friend and say, am I doing okay? Should I maybe get some help here? Because a lot of times when we're in that circumstance, we can't see what's happening. And we may not realize that we've reached a point where we're struggling so much that we've just learned how to exist that way and don't know that there's another option.
I like that answer because it gives you almost like a physical, I hate to say compare and contrast, but you're right. You're you can't see the forest for the trees sort of thing. Like you struggle for so long, you don't realize it. So the examples of not being able to shower, some examples you can see are sometimes nice to hear.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when, like you were saying, when it starts to impact your functioning and your ability to do the things that you would normally do to feel better, when those things aren't really working anymore, say you're going to activities that you love, like church or connecting with friends, you're kind of really not feeling there. You're not experiencing it like you used to. You just can't quite resolve that stress or that sadness that's there. And it's kind of starting to lose grasp on it, which you might notice or somebody else in your life might notice before you too. And so that's a really good time. And seeking help sooner rather than later can really, really help. It can really help to prevent symptoms from getting worse, from getting treatment. and it can help you if you're dealing with supporting other people who are having mental health concerns too. Yeah, and when I think about, you know, my mental health too, it is when, for me, those normal things that usually make me feel good are actually having the opposite reaction. So being with my family feels too stressful to do, or I'm not laughing at that thing that would normally make me feel like I'm laughing, or you can't stop crying and it's coming out at a time where this isn't quite normal for me for my emotional state. So usually then checking in with someone is really helpful and good to get another perspective. You know, we've normalized a lot of things like Brittany said. I work with a lot of new moms, and there's a certain understanding for a long time that I should be really stressed. I really shouldn't have, is not sleeping normal. And so we can really give guidance of, well, no, in a certain circumstance, when you have a baby, you should be able to sleep with baby sleeping. If the thoughts are there and you're causing a lot of anxiety for you and you're unable to do other things, that's maybe when we need to start talking about postpartum anxiety and how we can help you support you with that. You don't have to feel this way. And sometimes just hearing that can also help to reduce some of our distress.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say that in the world that we live in, there are a lot of tools that are really accessible to this generation that weren't even around 10 years ago. So if you're starting to feel like maybe things aren't quite right, doing a self check-in, there's all sorts of tools and different depression inventories and things you can do online, screening activities, things like that. The reason I bring that up is because I remember in college, when I was in graduate school, we take this course called DSM, and it's how to diagnose people. And the funny part about it is, I don't know about you guys, but everyone would go through each chapter and everyone in the room would go, oh my gosh, I have that.
Yeah.
And then they
Oh my
look at the
God.
next thing and say, oh, I think I have that too. Or my sister has that, or something like that. You start to identify. But I remember sitting in that room and we took a depression inventory and my depression score came back off the charts. And for me, that was normal. I didn't think that, you know, being easily fatigued and having difficulty with insomnia and finding little pleasure in things and all of these little symptoms that are actually depression symptoms, those were all normal for me. So I think sometimes when you grow up in a household or something that has mental illness in it or some sort of other intense stress, normal really isn't normal, even if it is just a setting on a washing machine. It's it can be one of those things that you don't realize that there is something better out there. So I would just encourage people to take opportunity to do some self-research and check in once in a while with your own mental health and go, gosh, it's how I'm feeling, what everyone else is feeling. Because sometimes, yeah, I've had major chaos this week, but that's how I grew up. That's normal for me. That doesn't mean that that's something that you have to live with yourself.
I did get somebody texting a question. Ooh. They asked, what is the minimum age that allows a youth to establish themselves to get professional mental health care apart from a more traditional family?
I love this question so much because of the work that we do with like gender affirmation care, LGBTQ stuff. We get this question a lot, and we get youth that they come to us when they get 14 years old. Because at 14 years old, you in Oregon have the ability to consent to your own medical treatment. You can come and you can go to therapy.
And parents don't have to know, or guardians don't have to know, or
no.
Okay.
Your guardians are legally entitled to know that you are receiving care, and they're going to, like, if they have insurance, they're going to receive like a bill.
Right.
But as far as like the details of what's being discussed, except for your diagnosis and treatment goals, correct me if I'm wrong, three of the people at the table. My understanding is that most of the rest is protected by law, under HIPAA unless it's something that's dangerous and it needs to involve another party. So 14, you can go, and most of what you talk about is protected, and beyond that, 18, then it's nobody's business where you are and what you do.
Right. Okay. I mean,
So the law
talking,
basically says that if you're 14, you can engage in services on your own. As a provider, we have to involve the parents by the end of treatment. So involving could be letting the parents know that their kid is being seen. It could be sending them a bill and saying, you know, that's how you're involved, you're paying the bill. It could be something like that. In Oregon, the process would be difficult if you were a parent and you wanted to see all the notes, you wanted to get all those records, but not impossible.
Okay.
So those of us who work with adolescents, we're careful on what we promise and don't promise to kids. We certainly want to protect their confidentiality, and we really value that relationship. But we're also very cautious and not over-promising and saying the parents will never know, you know, what goes on here. So it's a fine line, but certainly you can engage in services at 14 and get started without parental consent.
okay.
Could I throw a question?
Sure.
So I'm like Lance, it occurs to me, because I heard that story and had that experience also in my master's program, where when we took this, then it was a DSM-4, which was brand new at the time. But that same thing about, we were told at the outset, okay, as you're reading through this, you're going to be diagnosing yourself, you're going to be diagnosing your family. We're teaching you how to use this, and while we're teaching you, just know that it's going to be inaccurate when you apply it. But it's never occurred to me until now. So my question to the panel is, what conditions need to be in place that we're using this instrument that proves so unreliable on ourselves and our families, then we're applying it with such confidence to the people who are coming to see us?
I haven't thought about that. Of course, just my own perspective as a medical biller in profession for many years as well. I feel that sometimes diagnostic codes, while they're a tool and a guide, they really are something that kind of checks boxes for insurance companies, for billing purposes. But people are so complex that it's really, I think, more of a, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but more of a guide to build on, to be able to somehow gauge or look at what a person's experiencing and have a way to explain it back to them that might make sense. But it's so true. Many things can apply, and doesn't always feel like an exact science. It's difficult to diagnose because we can only go by what we see in front of us. A person could just be telling us what we want to hear or what they think we want to hear, and they could be experiencing something totally different on the inside. So it's, at least as a coder, as a biller, if I was working, trying to come up, or doing an assessment, I would use it as a guide, as a gauge, but never a true science or a true definite about anyone.
Makes sense. It's a framework. You start from there.
It can sometimes create labeling too, which we really don't like to do. Those of us that are passionate about the work that we do don't ever want anyone to feel labeled by something. Stigma exists in our society, and it's very heartbreaking. We are definitely much better than, like Lance said, maybe 10 years ago, where some of the options that people have now didn't even exist 10 years ago. There's still a stigma around mental health and wellness that's unfortunate, and the less that we express any type of thought or feeling to a person that could make them feel labeled, the better. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think
It's
answering
kind
that
of-
question is a
It's kind of tough.
subversive process that we need to be engaged in to provide good care, but certainly it's not the answer.
Right,
I agree.
exactly. That's a better way of summarizing it. It just checks boxes really in many ways. It doesn't truly tell us what a person's going through. That happens through connection, trust, and time.
I like that, thank you.
You're welcome.
I can add like my experience and my process to it, which I'm sure is different from, in some ways from other folks here. I agree with Bianca about many of the things you said. I certainly come from the less is more. In the diagnostic world, I work with what's in front of me, the symptoms that people are bringing. It does become kind of an art. You get to know the types of things that usually come up in front of you and the types of things it could be. It could be this, it could be that. Like Bianca was saying, sometimes it's a foot in the door, you know, or when I do diagnostics with somebody, I do like 2 hours in the beginning, and it's a doorway in, and then as we get to know each other, we learn more about what's happening for folks. Maybe we learn it's this instead, or that there's also this. And sometimes it's important for folks to like have a label because they're like, now I understand. There's other people that experience the same thing, and it helps people find community and feel not alone in that. But that's a conversation that I have with folks, because unless it's a diagnosis that we must have for insurance or there's like a safety reason with it, secondary diagnosis, we talk about, is it important for that to exist in the chart? Is it important to you as a person? So I'm mostly confident in those tools because I've been working with them for years. I'm familiar with them. I know what I'm looking for, and I know that I might change it in 6 months.
I think it's a collaborative process as well. So if I'm doing a diagnostic interview of any sort, there's one thing that kind of stands out at the beginning. And sometimes you have a client who will come in and their sole purpose is to say, what is wrong with me? What is going on with me? I'm not right in the head. And so for that person, I think the diagnosis is fairly important for you to be able to explain maybe what's going on with them psychologically or biologically, or a combination of both usually. And so if that's how someone presents, then I try to be pretty clear on the diagnostic process. But in the end of any of those diagnostic interviews, usually what I do is I'll get the picture and I'll figure out what I think is going on with them. And then at the end, I'll go over and I'll say, here's the diagnostic criteria that we have to meet to give you this diagnosis. I think it might be this. What do you think? And then I'll list out the criteria and go, do you have that one? Yeah, I got that one. Yeah. And we'll work through that together. And then we'll kind of have some comfort level before we leave that session with kind of what we came up with. Ultimately, I believe the DSM diagnostic process is pretty much existent for the insurance industry. So we are required to put some of those labels on people to show that this treatment is necessary. And once we get past that process and say, yes, this is a medically necessary service, then I don't focus much on diagnosis after that. Like Marie said, we try and get them in the door with a proper diagnosis for treatment. And then after that, we work with what's in front of them and work on specific symptoms and things like that.
Earlier you mentioned billing in younger people, and I think this question kind of leads into it. I would like to seek mental health support, but I don't think I could afford it. And that's not necessarily just young people, but I think especially in a poverty-stricken area, even if somebody is seeking mental health, they don't think they can afford it. Do you guys have any suggestions, options, ideas? Because it can be expensive. So, but it's also really important.
So I work for a nonprofit agency, which can be a wonderful benefit in this area because we do have a lot of